Today I'm showing you step by step how to build the best gaming PC for $500, and after that we're going to benchmark it in some popular games. We're gonna buy a cheap Windows 11 key from yourcdkey.com, which is the sponsor of this video, but more on them later. So the bare bones of our PC are going to be the motherboard and CPU combo. I chose an Intel i3 CPU, which also dictated the choice of the motherboard. Your motherboard will either support Intel CPUs or AMD CPUs, so it's crucial to make sure this combination is compatible. For the GPU it doesn't matter. So the CPU is the i3-12100F, and the F in the name means that it doesn't have integrated graphics. As you can see on the box it says discrete graphics required, and that means that we're gonna need a separate GPU in order to see something on the screen to render the graphics, and we're gonna be driving our gaming PC with an AMD GPU. It's the best choice right now, just like Intel is the best choice for a budget CPU, and sometimes the integrated graphics of a CPU and what that means exactly confuses people. So I'm gonna use this motherboard to explain it to you once and for all. It's actually really simple. So on the motherboard, here is where the CPU goes, and then here is the slot for the GPU. Now if I turn the motherboard, you will see all the connections that you usually see on the back of your PC case, and as you can see we've got an HDMI and a display port, and that's where it all comes together. So if you have a CPU with integrated graphics, then for example you can connect an HDMI here, and then the CPU will also be rendering the image, whether it's your Windows home screen or it's your game or a video. No matter what, whatever this CPU is processing, it will also use its integrated graphics in order to push it through the HDMI to your screen. However, since our GPU doesn't have integrated graphics and it says on the box that we need a GPU, it means that the HDMI and the display port are simply not gonna work because our CPU can't render anything, so we will need to connect our GPU to this PCIe lane, and now this is where everything comes together. So as you can see on the back of the GPU, you've got 4 ports, they've got protectors in them, but this is an HDMI for example, and so this GPU here has a PCIe connector right here, and that will connect here to the motherboard, and as a result our CPU only needs to do processing. It doesn't need integrated graphics, which means that the CPU is a bit cheaper. So this is everything that came with the motherboard and the CPU, and installing the CPU on the motherboard is actually not that hard. There's a plastic cover here, and if you read what's on it, it says install the processor before removing the cover. So you just push this lever down and to the side, you let it go up, then you can lift off this top, and then we can take the CPU out of the plastic. Now you've probably heard this before, but there's an arrow here on one corner of the CPU, and usually the same arrow should be in one of these corners right here, and maybe my eyesight is decreasing but I couldn't see one. However, if I push this down again, we can see the arrow on the plastic cover, so we can position the arrow on the CPU in the same corner as the arrow on the plastic. It just falls in, you don't need to push, and now you can push this down again and then push down this lever and it will just click off, so we can take off the plastic cover. Push down this lever really hard, by the way. I had to push the lever down so hard that it felt like I was doing something wrong, but it just very securely positions the CPU. Now the CPU does come with a cooler, and it has thermal paste pre-applied on the back. Now I'm not sure what to call these things on the side, but it's to connect the cooler to your motherboard, and instead of screwing it in, you just click it in with this. However, you should make sure that you turn them the right way. So as you can see, you can click them in and they're pretty secure, but when you turn them to the left, you can just pull them back out. So you should make sure that you turn them all to the right into the click position so that they don't come loose after you attach it. The cooler has one cable, and we will need to plug that in right here as the CPU fan. Actually, I'm gonna plug it in already so I can choose the perfect position for this, because we're gonna want to hide this wire. So I'm gonna choose this. So I'm gonna position the cooler first, and then I guess we can just push these down. Now when you do this corner first, make sure you do the opposite corner next. And now you can choose either corners and just finish it. And just like that, the CPU cooler is connected, and on the back you can see the 4 pins of the cooler that we just attached. And if we push this cable in between here, and then maybe also in between here, it's actually perfectly managed and you almost can't see it. Okay, now I almost can't wait to check out the case, but we're gonna need to do some stuff first. Well, actually not that much. There are 2 more things to do before we can check out the case and put this in it. Now, in order to keep this build below $500, there were some sacrifices made. The RAM or the memory is definitely one of them. I went with 1 stick of single channel memory instead of 2 sticks of dual memory. Usually I would definitely go for 16 gigabytes of RAM, 2 sticks of 8 gigabytes. We also have 2 slots here. However, the budget didn't allow it. If you want to go slightly over budget, you can definitely do that. I will link an update to the RAM in the description. You can also start using this and then later upgrade to dual channel memory. Now for the storage, I actually didn't make that big of a sacrifice. So what we have here is an Intel M.2 drive. This is an NVMe NVMe SSD, which means that it's really fast. It's also 512 gigabytes, which means that it's gonna be enough for a few big games. If you have a huge library, you're definitely gonna need more storage, but I cannot take that into consideration when making a $500 PC. Our goal here is to play 1080p games in a decent frame rate. We're gonna run some benchmarks later, and an M.2 drive like this needs to be installed right here. So you just tilt the drive a bit like this, and then that way you can push it in here. And there was one extra port that came with the motherboard, and as you can see, this is an M.2 locker. And so this connector here, if I pull it out for a second, you can see that it's pretty high from the base level of the motherboard. And so when we push this down, we can't push it down completely because that would break the connector. So we use this tiny screw. By the way, you also need a very tiny screwdriver, and I can remove it quickly again. So we have to put this here in the third hole and then just attach this. Actually, turns out you don't really need a screwdriver. And then you push this lever to the left, connect the drive again, push it down, and then this lever should go on top of it. So you gotta fiddle around with it a bit. It just locked it, and now this doesn't move again. And so this M.2 drive is gonna be really fast. It's gonna make your Windows faster. It's gonna load your games really quickly. Okay, now let's push this aside for a second. This here is the previous budget build that I built on the channel, and I took it over here because I want to talk to you about the RAM situation, because this is gonna be important, and a lot of you are gonna copy this build but maybe have a bit more budget to slightly upgrade the RAM, and if you do, you definitely should. So I absolutely want to make this clear. So before I take out that RAM, what I chose right now is one stick of single channel memory. So you can choose single channel memory or dual channel memory. Now when you go for dual channel memory like I did in this build, you need 2 sticks of memory. This is one of those sticks, Corsair Vengeance LPX 8 gigabytes, and we have 2 of those sticks in the build. As you can see, 16 gigabytes, 2 times 8. But as I was saying, the most budget path is buying this one right here and then potentially upgrading it later by adding a second one of this. This is 8 gigabytes, the absolute minimum we're gonna need in that system in order to run games efficiently. I'm going to install one of these sticks right now, since that makes us stay below the $500. Actually, I think we might be like a few dollars above it, but I didn't want to do what some other YouTubers are doing, and that's downgrading something to absolute trash in order to stay below the $500 and not make it 503, for example. So we are going to install it in the first slot here. You just push this lever to the back and I can align it correctly and push it in. Now, what I was talking about here just before, when I was talking about YouTubers choosing cheaper parts in order to not go $1 above the maximum budget, was Linus Tech Tips using a really trashy case in his $500 gaming PC build. And the case that I have right here, I think it was $9 or $10 more. But before I take off this plastic, take another look at the cheap case that Linus used. I mean, that PC looked like garbage. And then this case right here, as I said, was about $10 more. I'm not saying it's an epic case, but I mean, the window is quite big. Let's get an amazing peel. There's another peel for us on the inside, but we've got a very decent window. The front also looks great. We've got this magnetic filter on the top. I mean, you might be in a tight spot if spending $10 more on a case that looks a bit better is not something you can do. If you're like, I'm gonna push this PC under my desk, I don't really care what it looks like, then I will link that case in the description. It's the absolute cheapest case you can go with. But that case also had pretty much no room in the back for cable management. And let's check what it looks like with this case. So we definitely have enough room. You can clearly see the thickness of this backspace here. We have quite a bit of room for all our cables. So yeah, I'm really happy we chose this case. Actually, let's take off this panel and do this peel as well. That was so satisfying. But yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm really happy we chose this case. I will link both in the description. Now, the first thing you're gonna want to do before installing your motherboard inside of the case is taking this back panel which comes in the box of the motherboard. So you have to install it from the inside. Just align it correctly and then you push until it clicks on the top as well. And then once that's installed on the back, we can install our motherboard. Make sure that all cables are out of the way. For example, this fan cable. I'm gonna hang it outside of the case. And actually, before putting it in, I think the screws are on the back, so we're definitely gonna need those. You don't need all of these cables yet, that's for later. There's some cable management stuff in the case. This here is a little speaker that makes a beep sound when something is wrong or when you start your PC. Now, there's a bunch of screws in this bag, but the ones we need are these right here. There's a bunch of them and they have a tiny ring on the top. These are going to be used to connect our motherboard to the case, so we can put our motherboard in the case, align all the holes. I did put the backplate in the wrong way, so we'll have to turn it around. So the easiest way to install your your motherboard correctly is to first align the back plate, make sure all these ports fit, and then you can just look at the inside and drop it into place. And then after that, you simply take the screws that I showed before, and then once the motherboard is placed correctly, you can install all the screws. So once your motherboard has been secured into place, we can start with other connections. There are a bunch of cables on the back that we need to connect to the motherboard. However, it's pretty straightforward once I'm gonna show you how. And then we also need to install the graphics card, really exciting, and the power supply, which is gonna come right here on the bottom. Now, one problem we are going to have is that I didn't pay attention to the fact that this case only has one case fan. I think the orange case I mentioned a while back did have two case fans, so I think that makes this case about $20 to $25 more expensive because I'm gonna have to add one more fan. We have this fan which will make the air go out of the case, but we need another fan right here on the inside to intake the air so that the air goes through the case like this and then goes out like that. I'm gonna install that extra fan later. I'm gonna use one that I have here in the studio, but I will link options in the description. I think it'll make the total of this build about $520, which I mean is close enough to 500 if it means we're gonna have a pretty and good PC. So we're gonna install the GPU in the case first, because after that we need to install the power supply and connect a lot of wires. It'll be useful if the GPU is already installed. So what I went for is an AMD RX 6600, and this is a great budget 1080p gaming card. I can't wait to benchmark it, but I will show some benchmarks on the screen. Currently AMD is much cheaper than Nvidia for the same performance, and so we're gonna have to install it in the slot in the PC. It will look like this when we installed it. However, before doing that, we need to remove these two back plates. It's very easy. You just detach the screw on the side and then you can just take it out. This is another advantage of taking a decent case. When you take a really cheap case, then you're probably gonna have to tear off these back plates. It's meant to be like that, but you cannot reattach them later, whereas with this case you can always just put it back in. So then the last preparation is loosening this screw here, and that allows you to pull it up, which will make room for the GPU here. So once you're ready to install it, you can push down this lever, so then we can push the GPU into the PCIe lane. So then you pull this up, align the GPU correctly, you push it in, you will see the lever that we pushed down before clicking up again, and then we can make this drop and tighten the screw again. And after that, you take one of the screws that we used to detach this back plate, and we need to screw it in right here. So you push on this side and on the GPU to align them correctly, and that way you can attach the screw again, which means that the GPU will now be locked securely into place. Now I'm gonna quickly show you step by step how to install all the cables on the back. It's actually pretty simple. So first of all, you're gonna take these two cables, audio and USB, and we're gonna have to plug them in right here on the bottom left. Now there are several ways to get cables from the back of your PC to the front to your motherboard. For example, here on the top, here on the side, but there's also two holes on the bottom, and we are going to take the left one, and then you just plug audio into AUD 1 and then USB into USB 1. So then you're gonna take the USB 3.0 cable, put it through the bottom hole in the middle, and then we can pull it through, and then you're gonna put it in this USB 2 connector. So I'm gonna plug it in first, and despite the name, this cable is for USB 3.0, and what we just did is we connected these two USB ports with the first USB cable, the small one, and then the second one that was for this USB 3.0 port. So now we're gonna be able to use the ports on the front to connect USB devices to the motherboard, just like we would on the back here, but these ports are directly connected to the motherboard. We just needed cables to connect these ports of the case itself to the motherboard. So the last cables we need for now are these three, and for these we're gonna use the hole on the bottom, the one towards the front, because that way we can reach the ports right here on the bottom right of the motherboard, and the manual tells us exactly what to do. So this is the port that we're gonna be installing. You can see these types of cables are what we will install, and this is a drawing of the purpose of all the separate pins. So as you see, one of the pins is missing here, and the exact same thing is the case in real life. The top right one is missing, and so that means that in order to use this drawing here, we need to turn it around, because this is what it looks like in real life. So this pin here is to connect the reset switch, and according to the drawing, that's these two pins here. So I'm gonna connect this pin to the motherboard, and then that way, using that drawing, you can connect all of the other pins. So once all of that is connected, we can install the case fan. And as I mentioned before, we're going to install another extra fan. I found a great one in my storage. You can use cheaper fans. I will link this in the description as well as some other options. This is a Noctua fan. It's a really high quality one. Even the cable is high quality, but I will link some other options, because what you need is one extra fan and then one fan splitter. So what we did before is we connected the fan of the CPU to the top here on the motherboard into the CPU fan header, right? Now besides that header, there is one extra more which is called System Fan 1, and that is where we could connect the fan that comes with the case. We could connect this cable here to the motherboard, however that means that we can't connect our second fan because the only fan headers on the motherboard are one for the CPU and then one for a case fan. So what you need is this, a fan splitter. I found one on Amazon for $4, so I will link it in the description together with a fan option or maybe a few. And so one side of that goes into the motherboard and then it splits, in my case, into 3 different fan headers. So that means I could connect 3 fans to it. We only need 2 case fans for this build. One right here that's gonna get air into the case and then one on the back that's gonna get the air out of it. So on the side we see System Fan 1. I'm gonna plug the splitter into that. Then I'm gonna push the splitter to the back of the case because we wanna keep stuff clean. The cable from the case fan is gonna go out through the top hole. However, we can tuck it away in the top left corner of the case and that's gonna make it very cleanly managed. Now if you use some force on this front panel, you can click it off, and that's gonna be necessary in order to install this fan in here. And so by doing that, you can position the fan in the second position here on the inside, and then you can take the screws that you get with the fan and turn them in through the holes on the front, which will make it so the fan is perfectly fit into place. Now you could add a second one or even a third one, but in this budget build, that's absolutely not the goal. There will be some gains, but they will be minor, and that's not what you should spend your money on in a budget build. By the way, before I reattach this, there are these clips on the side, and if you pull all of them back, you can remove the filter here, and that way you can clean it. Now, I didn't really install this correctly because the cable here is on the outside. I'm not gonna redo it though. I'm gonna route the cable to the back, and then we're just gonna click the front panel on again. And then finally, now we have the 2 fans here installed. So this here is the splitter that's connected to the motherboard. The front fan goes into that, and then the fan here from the case that was installed, we also click that in. And then later when we turn on the PC, both fans should be controlled by the motherboard, and they will spin faster or slower depending on the temperatures. What we need to install now is the power supply, and I took a very budget one. It's a decent one, but this is definitely not a power supply that you will carry to your next build, especially if you're upgrading it to a bigger GPU or a better CPU. However, it's perfect for now, and I also didn't take a modular one. So with this power supply, all the cables are fixed. More expensive power supplies are modular, which means that you will have a bunch of connections here and then only connect the cables that you need. And as a result of that, you can keep the back of your PC more clean because only the cables that you need are in it. However, after we're done, you won't see any cable of the power supply here on the front. So to be fair, it doesn't really matter. Now with the power supply, you get 4 screws. So the ventilation of the power supply should be on the bottom, and then the power input should be towards the back of your PC. That way you're just gonna shove it in. Then you'll need to align these holes for the screws and just tighten them one by one. So the biggest cable goes through the top here, and then you connect it here on the motherboard. Then you'll find another cable that says CPU. We are pushing that through the top, and that goes into this connector. Let's plug it in. So then we have another cable that's 2 parts, and both of them say PCIe, which is what we connected our GPU to, the PCIe lane. So we're gonna push it through the bottom hole, and then that needs to connect it here on the GPU. I'm gonna take this one here because then I can push this to the bottom, and there's only one cable going to the GPU. Gonna pull it through from the back, and then there is one cable from the case itself that we didn't connect yet. So this cable says LED, and apparently there's LEDs in the front, but those need power, so this is a power connector, and our power supply has a few of those. So you just take one of them and you plug it into the back of this LED connector. It won't fit into the front, and then we can put our case on the side because now it's time to manage all of these cables. And I'm not gonna bore you with that, so I'm gonna show you a quick time lapse of me cable managing this PC. I know it's not a perfect job, but I want to get to the benchmarking as quick as possible. I'm also really happy with what the inside of the PC looks like. Let's put on the side panel and look at this. We're gonna install Windows, set up the PC, and then benchmark it. So I just finished installing Windows on the PC. It's ready to go. I will show you everything in a second if you want to do this yourself. I used an installation media. There's a few things we really need to do. I just launched it. Well, I changed the background because I'm really hyped for Diablo 4. I want to play it this evening. But when you freshly install Windows without activating it, they limit you in everything you want to do. Also, after a while, I think it's after a month, a watermark will appear right here, the Activate Windows watermark. You definitely know it. Now, to buy the Windows 11 Pro activation key, I'm going to go to vip-yourcdkey.com. They are the sponsor of this build. I'm gonna search for Windows 11 Pro. You can see it right here, so let's click on it. And by default, the price is $29. However, if we click on buy now and enter my code TVN, you can see that you get 25% off, which makes Windows 11 Pro only $22. So I just bought it. I'm going to copy the key. We can go to activation settings, change the product key, click on change. We're gonna paste it here, and then we click on next. It will verify it. You click activate again, and boom, Windows is activated. If we close this, we go to to personalize. Everything's gone. We can change all the accent colors. And just like that, we activated Windows 11 Pro for cheap. If you want to activate your PC yourself, get rid of the watermark or install a new PC and then activate it. I will add the link vip.yourcdkey.com in the description. And with my code TVN, you get 25% off, which is a big discount. It's a bigger discount than some others I've seen, so definitely don't forget code TVN, 25% off. The link will be in the description. Now, to make a Windows installation media, it's really simple. So all you need is a USB drive. This can also be a USB SSD, like any drive you have. So you search Google for Windows installation media. You can see download Windows 11. And then here you can choose create Windows 11 installation media. You just click download now. I will put this drive in the PC so I can actually show you how to do it. So it's downloaded. We click open file. Yes. Of course, you need to do this on another PC or a laptop, whatever, because the PC isn't gonna work yet when you're installing it. Just click accept. You have no choice. You can always uncheck this and then you can choose the language and stuff. You go to next. You choose USB flash drive, next, and then you can choose one. So this is my USB. Now you have to make sure that there's no data on it that you will need, because it will completely wipe everything, then make it an installation drive. You click next and then it will start creating your drive. As you can see, it's progressing. And then after a few minutes, the installation drive will be ready. So you can just take it out of the PC, plug it into your new PC, and it will immediately boot into the Windows installation screen. Now, if you only care about the benchmarks, you can skip to that chapter. However, if you want to build this PC yourself, I will show you exactly what to do once you installed Windows and activated it, because this PC isn't ready to start gaming right now. There's a few things you really need to do. One of them I will show you right now. As you can see, our memory is not running at the full speed. The speed should be 3200 megahertz, so we're not getting the full potential out of our one stick of RAM, so that's gonna be really important. There's a few drivers that really need to be installed, so I'm gonna show you really quickly step by step what to do. The first thing is gonna be that memory. I'm gonna restart the PC, and then while it's starting up, I'm gonna press the shortcut for the BIOS. I think it's gonna be F2 or delete, so I'm gonna press both of them while the PC is starting up. It's a really fast PC for starting up, by the way. It launches in like 7 seconds. So as you can see here in the BIOS on the left, memory, it's not running at full capacity, which as you can see on the right is 3200. So all you need to do is click on XMP profile 1 here and then press F10 on your keyboard, which will turn this memory profile from disabled to enabled. You click yes, and then the PC will restart. I'm not gonna go into the BIOS again. So it's starting right now, and I'm telling you, it's really fast. Look at this. So let's test. Control Shift Escape for the task manager. Let's go to activity and check the memory, 3200. This is amazing. It's working at full capacity right now. Now, the first thing you can always do, which will install a lot of missing drivers, is do a Windows update. You can go to check for updates. As you can see, there's a lot of them. We're just gonna click on install all, and I'm gonna skip to when this is finished. Alright, so you will have to do this updating a few times. Your PC will restart, and then some updates that failed because not everything was installed yet, then now are available, so you can update those. So you do it like 2 or 3 times until when you click on check for updates, it will say you're up to date on the left. It will be in a second. There we go, you're up to date. And then after this, there's 2 drivers I will install manually, and that's the motherboard and the GPU. So for the motherboard, you just check the exact one you have. So you look it up and you choose drivers. The manufacturer will always have the drivers for the exact model on their website. So under drivers and downloads, you can go to driver and you select the operating system. We chose Windows 11, and then here you will find the drivers you need. You can just download them, install them. PC will probably restart. I'm going to install the chipset driver, install the audio driver, the LAN driver, and that's it. I'm going to install these 3, right click one of them. Let's start with the chipset, extract all, extract, open it, run the setup. Yes, and then you just install all 3. Alright, then after restarting, the last thing I'm gonna install is the driver of the GPU, of course. RX 6600 drivers, Windows 11 64-bit. Let's click on download, and I'm going to run the installation. So now that all of the drivers have been installed, the PC is completely set up, and I'm ready to start benchmarking. So I will show all the games that I tested in different settings. I hope the game that you wanna play on the PC is one of them. I couldn't test everything, but here are the games I tested. So that's gonna be everything for the benchmarking. If you wanna build a streaming setup with this PC, it's gonna be one of my next videos. I'm gonna build a budget streaming setup, and the PC we just built is gonna be part of it, so you might wanna subscribe for that. I hope to see you in one of my next videos, maybe that one. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a nice day.